It's, uh, it's 6:30, and so I'm so thankful that several of you were able to set time aside for our workshop this evening. This is a part of the series for Down Syndrome Indiana, and let's see here. It's the second out of three in the series, and I'm particularly excited about this evening's workshop. I actually created it just for Down Syndrome Indiana earlier today, pulling together experience from working with literally thousands of families as to what type of situations that we have encountered that we needed to provide assistance to resolve, fix, get back on track, etc. So the majority of what we covered this evening will be from real life situations. Of course, all names have been changed to protect the innocent. A little humor. But I think you're going to enjoy it because it's real life stuff. It's not theory, but from actual practice. Many of you may know that my focus on special needs goes back about 26 years. So I've been at it a long time, and so I have a wealth of practical experience in working with lots of different situations. And so I think this evening, what I'd like to do is just go through a series of points based on these experiences and invite everyone to ask questions, because we're going to traverse everything this evening from government benefits, do's and don'ts, estate planning, special needs trusts, ABLE accounts, guardianship. I mean, we're going to kind of be going everywhere with the do's and don'ts and frequently made mistakes, things that we have to unwind, undo, get back on track, etc. And hopefully you'll find this both interesting, motivating to plan for your own family situation. Some of you may kind of scratch your head and wonder, wow, I wonder if that applies to me. And so all of the above. But again, I'm particularly excited about bringing this to you. I also, for those of you that are not familiar with me or joining us for the first time, it is a three-part series. There is indeed a Tuesday evening of next week. And next week is also unique, which was kind of part of the series this year. Let's go where we've not gone before. Let's look at some new, fresh topics, etc. And so next week it's going to be a focus on financial steps for adults with special needs. So the focus is going to be it's going to be helpful to everyone, certainly, but there's going to be a bit of a focus on young adults into adulthood with that have special needs, and so it has a consumer perspective to it. I think you're going to find it quite interesting, and I am also particularly excited to bring that workshop to you because it's reflective of the fact that our special needs population, and certainly with Down syndrome leading the way, are living long, long lives in many cases. And as a part of that, they're embracing everything from semi-independent living to driving in some cases, employment in other cases, outliving the parents. It's just all over the board. And it's been incredible to witness this over the last 26 years because we're at a different place now than literally we were just 26 years ago. Employment is not foreign to us, and balancing benefits with earned income, dealing with inheritances as our adult children with special needs outlive us. As I sit here as a father of a child with special needs in my 60s, and it's a wonderful thing, and we want to embrace it, celebrate it, and certainly be prepared for it. So again, there is a third in the three-part series next Tuesday evening. Please invite friends and let's grow the group for next Tuesday. It is going to be unique in the focus, consumer focus. So that's gonna be awesome. Also, I want to let you know, as a part of participating in the series, I'm very pleased to announce that we are providing free follow-up consultations on an individual basis. There is so much material, it has to leave many wondering, how much of this applies to me, or am I good or not? Do I need to revisit some things? This type of thing. And so to help ensure that you get the most out of the time spent and material covered, again, I'm pleased to let you know that we'll be providing a free follow-up consultation individually. It can be in person at my office in Indianapolis, assuming most of you are closer to it, though I have an office in Louisville, which, as I shared with Mary a few minutes ago, I'm actually sitting in my office in Louisville as we speak. I met with families all day today here, and I will again tomorrow. So I have an office in Louisville, an office in Indianapolis, or whatever's closest to you, probably Indy. So we can meet in person, or we can meet virtually. Certainly by Zoom, that type of thing. So how that works is Jamie Sturkey, my parent advocate and relationship coordinator, and so thankful for Jamie, such a passionate advocate for special needs with a son that has mitochondrial. She'll send out to you a thank you email, thanking you for participating in any part of the workshop series and getting the free consultation. And I did say free, is as easy as simply replying to her email. I'd like to schedule a free consultation. That simple. And we really work hard to accommodate schedules. We have certainly consultations during the week, during the day. When I'm not speaking like this evening, then I'll meet with families into the late afternoon, and even Saturdays. We have Saturday hours, usually 2 or 3 days per month, either in person or virtually. So we're sure to find a time that's going to work for you, and look forward to meeting many of you individually. And if I've already met you, or we've already done some work, take advantage of the consultation to revisit what we've done, because tonight we're going to be looking at reasons to kind of go back and rethink earlier planning in light of things that have changed. So with that in mind, strap on your roller skates. I do want to encourage questions, and let's not hold them to the end. Let's just take questions as they come, because we're going to be going through so many topics this evening that I think it'll make sense while the screen slide is up, or the screen reflects the questions or topics, to do that. And so for questions, if you wouldn't mind entering something into the chat, that would be particularly helpful. And hopefully between Macy and I, excuse me, I'm so sorry, between Macy and I, we will notice the questions that are entered into chat, and alternatively, if you want to share your voice with us, unmute and ask your question, and we'll do that. I really hope that it's not a monologue this evening. I really want your questions and your input, that type of thing, as I'm sure probably more than normally this evening is going to stir some questions, make you rethink things. So with that in mind, I'm going to go to share screen and bring up the presentation. And again, I want to thank everyone for taking time out of your busy schedules. I also want to thank Down Syndrome Indiana, and Stephanie is sometimes with us, but this evening we have the leader of the pack, as they say, and Macy Pohl is joining us, Executive Director of Down Syndrome Indiana, and we, of course, are so thankful for her leadership. So here we are with share screen, and I'm going to need to be made the co-host if that's possible.
I'll do that right now.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your help, Macy. Okay. And if someone can give me a nod or let me know if the presentation is showing. Wonderful. Awesome. Okay. So this evening, top financial mistakes to avoid for dependents with special needs. And avoiding these common situations can provide a significant impact on the life of a loved one with special needs today and into the future. All right. By the way, we're up to 14. That's very exciting. If you know anybody that you can see is not on this evening and you're thinking, boy, they really should be on, text them, call them, tell them to join us. It's as easy as forwarding the link to them so that they can join us as well. Would love to have more people with us, and more people, again, taking advantage of the free follow-up consultation. So let's grow the group as the evening unwinds. Okay. The caregiver, a big concern of ours, of course, is our kids get older and we kind of peak and then perhaps start to fade a little. We're concerned about their future. We've worked so hard to build a quality of life for them, and we certainly don't want to regress or digress. We want that quality of life to be maintained even when we're no longer here. And of course, that is a great concern. For the one or two that last joined us, I want to remind that questions are not only allowed, they're welcome. You can enter questions into chat. You can enter or you can unmute yourself and ask questions. And even if it's off topic from the standpoint of not what's on the screen, but what's on the screen causes you to think of something, I welcome again your input and your questions, and I'm so thankful that we have a good group this evening with us. So here we have the first slide with a list of issues, questions, situations that sometimes require fixing or where penalty is involved. And I tried to stick with themes screen by screen, at least as best I could, so that it's not hodgepodge, but hang in there with me, please. Have you or some family member left or have plans to leave more than $2,000 to your dependent with special needs in your will or your trust? So, 26 years ago, it was pretty much the parents and that was it. But these days it's aunts, it's uncles, it's grandparents. So many are involved and wanting to be supportive and to be helpful. And as many of you know, $2,000, certainly in the state of Indiana, is the resource limit for much of the government benefits we work so hard to get in place for our loved ones with special needs. And my child with special needs is 28, will be 29 in May. And so that's why my focus on special needs began about 26 years ago. So these things are certainly familiar to me, but $2,000 again is the resource limit. What benefits am I speaking of? I'm speaking of SSI, Medicaid, and by extension, Medicaid waivers. And you've got the majority of the more significant help and government benefits wrapped up in those three issues. Medicaid for healthcare, Medicaid waiver services for care, activities, additional supports, everything from activities for daily living to light housekeeping, cooking, food prep. You've got behavioral therapy. You've got community habitation. You've got rec therapy, behavioralist. Again, the list just goes on and on and on. So maintaining eligibility for these benefits is so very important. And with the $2,000 resource limit, it's important to plan in such a way that more than that amount of funds does not fall into their laps where it would risk eligibility for these benefits. And government benefits have responded to inflation, certainly. And these days, certainly over the lifetime of our child or dependent with special needs, these benefits are worth, at a minimum, hundreds of thousands of dollars. The state is not unaware, as we know from recent reaction to the budget miscalculation, the State House rally, et cetera. So a lot of focus on these government benefits, and I would encourage everyone to be a strong advocate for our special needs community to both maintain benefits. Indiana is not a bad place to be for a child with special needs. As I mentioned, I have offices both in Indianapolis and Kentucky, down in Louisville, and I know from the number of states that I've worked with, spoken at conferences for, et cetera, that again, Indiana, not a bad place to be. All right, number two, are there family members that are accumulating savings or purchasing government bonds in your child's name? So this is more of a present thing. So we have number one deals with estate planning, meaning is it possible a grandparent in your family has listed all grandchildren to receive $5,000 each or $10,000 each, maybe from the proceeds from the sale of their home or other assets. And then step number two, is it possible it's not even waiting until these family members pass away, but is it possible assets are actually accumulating as we speak, in the name of your child? Was there at some point a question of, what's little Bobby or Susie's social security number or that type of thing, and kind of what are they up to, and could it be that again, assets are accumulating in their name, assets that may undermine continued eligibility for very important benefits. Number three, allowing accounts to rise above $2,000, especially while receiving SSI. So I would say for families I meet with as their children are approaching age 18, and sometimes families seek me out as 18 approaches for issues, including everything from guardianship to estate planning, setting up a trust, applying for SSI, looking at voc rehab, employment opportunities. There's just so much in that transition period coming up from maybe 14 to 18 on up to age 22. But if parents are not vigilant, it's very possible for assets to accumulate in excess of $2,000, putting eligibility for government benefits at risk. And in the case of SSI, if you're maintaining a representative payee account, then Social Security, as you may know, is electronically monitoring that account. And if the account that Social Security is electronically depositing into gets north of $2,000, sooner or later, there's a good chance that you're going to get a letter from Social Security indicating that there was a period of ineligibility due to having too much assets in that account. So we really must stay vigilant in terms of transferring funds out of the account or accounts that Social Security is depositing into to cover what the funds are intended for, and that is typically their fair share of household expenses, food, utilities, mortgage payment, rent, etc. So number four, forgetting the resource limit applies to Medicaid when SSI is replaced with SSDI or survivor benefits. So what's this about? Well, many families are not aware that the journey with SSI is frequently short-lived, and it usually occupies the space between our child or dependent with special needs turning age 18 and then when they can attach to somebody else's record. So depending upon the age of the parents and the age gap between the child with special needs and the parent, the experience with SSI may be only a few years, or it may be as much as 20 years. But they are basically someone in waiting to make a claim on a parent's record or potentially their own record if they have part-time employment. And in many cases, SSI at that point sunsets, it goes away. Or if the record that they're drawing off of is not particularly strong, they may become dual eligible, and that is there'll be a small measure of SSI to top off their tank, in addition to the SSDI benefit they're drawing off of a parent or themselves. But the point of number four here is that when one does completely rotate off of SSI and they're on SSDI, as an example, drawing off of their own record, drawing off of a parent's record, and many of you are aware that for 2024, the maximum SSI benefit in Indiana is $943 a month, again, $943 per month. However, there are Social Security benefits substantially higher than $943 to be had. And so these come in the form of Social Security disability insurance benefits and or survivor benefits. And not in all cases are our children eligible for that. And there are rules to follow, and there is such a thing as poisoning the well and undermining their future ability to draw these lucrative or very generous benefits. We see typically the maximum amount our most often adults with special needs drawing in the way of Social Security benefits getting really close to $3,000 a month. And you heard me right, I did say $3,000 a month. That would be on the survivor benefit end, which can be as much as 75% of the full retirement age benefit from a parent. When drawing from disability or retirement benefits, it's as much as 50%. So I had someone in my office today that turns 65 in May, very soon. And so he's planning to retire. So we had a conversation about his child with special needs who's age 30. And that child is drawing SSI currently, but once the father starts drawing Social Security retirement benefits, and actually it's not 65, it's 66 and a half, excuse me. He is at full retirement age as of May or June of this year. And when he starts drawing Social Security retirement benefits, his adult child, 30 years old with special needs, will draw off of his record. So as best we could calculate, the son with special needs will be drawing somewhere in the neighborhood of $1,700 per month. Well, that's almost twice the SSI benefit that he's drawing. And so in that case, at his age 30 this year, with father turning 66 and a half, retiring and drawing retirement benefits from Social Security, the 30-year-old child will transition off of SSI and transition onto SSDI, drawing off of his father's record, receiving about $1,700 per month. So that sounds wonderful, but then there are two complications with that. Number one, with that much money coming in monthly, what do we do with the money? Because if it's not expensed or utilized and it accumulates, then when north of $2,000, it creates a problem. Now, you might cry foul and say, well, how could it create a problem? It's SSDI, not SSI. And you're absolutely right. For SSDI, there is no $2,000 resource limit. So when our family members with special needs start drawing SSDI off of their own record or off of our record, there is no $2,000 resource limit. There's no limit as to how much they can have in the way of assets and actually continue to draw that benefit. But the fly in the ointment is Medicaid. So if they are receiving Medicaid benefits for healthcare, and certainly Medicaid waiver benefits with the Medicaid, then they are still subject to the $2,000 resource limit. And I bring this to your attention because I've had multiple family situations where once SSI is abandoned and the adult child is receiving SSDI, and therefore Social Security is no longer subject to the $2,000 resource limit, they let the benefits accumulate. And unfortunately, when Medicaid does a random audit and sees that they now have $3,000, $4,000, or $5,000 as a result of these higher Social Security benefits, they can literally become ineligible for Medicaid and in the process lose their Medicaid waiver. So please be aware of that. We do have a comment or question in the chat. Okay, the question is, or the statement, that's not enough to live to the standard of living he's accustomed to surviving on monthly. How can we save more from them? This makes me very nervous considering inflation. And boy, isn't that the truth? Okay, so thanks so much for the comment. And we are going to get into options available or what we have at our disposal. Two of the certainly more popular opportunities we have in the special needs community are to establish a special needs trust for our dependent with special needs. A properly established special needs trust does not count against the $2,000 resource limit. So we literally can fund a special needs trust with as much in the way of assets as we have available to place in there. And if you're looking at your bank balance thinking, well, that doesn't bode well for me, there's not much to, not going to be much, then the good news is life insurance can frequently come to the rescue, because life insurance obtained on a parent's life can feature the special needs trust as a beneficiary. So even if there are not a lot of resources to put in the special needs trust while parents are living, it can be funded with life insurance proceeds or leftover proceeds or leftover funds from a 401k, 403b, IRA, Simple, SEP, Roth, etc. So there are lots of ways to fund a trust. And as we mentioned earlier, grandparents can get in on the act and leave funds to the trust, make gifts to the trust, etc. The second piece is the ABLE accounts. And ABLE accounts are another option to accumulate funds that are there for future use. Certainly very exciting. ABLE accounts, by way of full disclosure, I'm on the state ABLE board. Governor Holcomb appointed me to the state ABLE board last year, and so we're working to try to make ABLE accounts in Indiana among the most competitive and attractive in the United States, and we're up to thousands of accounts. I'm really excited to say. So it's growing and growing quickly. For 2024, just here within the last 6 weeks, the tax credits with ABLE accounts went live in Indiana. And so please know that like 529 college accounts, Indiana ABLE accounts now have a 20% tax credit on the first 2,500, not quite as high as the limit for 529 accounts, which stand currently at 7,500, increased from 5,000 January 1st of last year. Again, 5,000 up to 7,500 a little over a year ago for what applies to the 20% credit for 529 accounts, but ABLE accounts, the first 2,500. So 20% of 2,500 is $500. And so there's $500 in state tax credits to be had each year with ABLE accounts, if that's appropriate in your situation. So we have both special needs trusts and we have ABLE accounts as avenues to accrue, accumulate, build more in the way of funds to help undergird and support the quality of life for our loved ones with special needs. Okay, let's see here. I think we will get to something on adult child benefits a little later. I do want to revisit that because that's where the large Social Security benefits are at, and talk about what it takes to be eligible for our adult child to draw off of our record. But I also threw in the resource limit of married of 3,000. This does not apply to parents. This would be the consumers with special needs. So if two were to get married and they both have special needs, then together the resource limit goes from 2,000 to 3,000. Okay, number 6, allowing assets to accumulate in bank accounts, mutual funds, UTMA, which stands for Uniform Transfer to Minor Act accounts, and UTMA 529 accounts. So these accounts in the name of our child or dependent with special needs or under their Social Security number are actually recognized as available resources and would undermine eligibility for SSI and also Medicaid and Medicaid waivers by extension. So we generally have to be cautious about setting up financial accounts and financial vehicles for our children with special needs. Because some of these do count toward the $2,000 resource limit, and we could put them in harm's way in terms of eligibility for these valuable benefits. Now, notice for 529 accounts, it's not all 529 accounts, and it's very rare to find a UTMA or Uniform Transfer to Minor Act account for a young person with special needs. But nevertheless, if it's funded with their money, then whoever the 529 is with may have set it up as a UTMA account. You typically know by looking at the registration. So when you receive statements or go online and pull up a statement, the name and address area shows the registration. And if the acronym or initials UTMA are not featured, then chances are it's not a UTMA 529 and it's not a problem. Now, I'm currently working with a family where the child grew up into an adult to the age of 21 before any government benefits were pursued. And so I do want to mention that engaging early is usually best. The ship rarely sails, meaning there's very, very unusual to be in a situation where it's too late to do things. Almost everything with special needs is fixable with some good planning. But again, engaging early is best. And we'll talk about some of those reasons here in a moment. All right, designating your child with special needs as the beneficiary on life insurance or retirement accounts. This is a concern. Financial institutions are not going to, quote unquote, recognize whether there's special needs or not. They'll cut checks, they'll pay claims, and they will provide resources to our children, and it will upset government benefits that we may have spent years putting in place. And if this is upon our death, we won't even be there to see it happen. It'll be a bit of a mess that good-meaning family members that are stepping up to be guardians, trustees, or executors, et cetera, of your estate will be dealing with those issues. So generally not a good idea to designate our child or children with special needs as a beneficiary. Especially if they have government benefits, or they would not be able to discern how to handle a significant sum of money should it be received. Okay, question popped up. Thank you so much. Will regular 529s undermine government benefits? And the answer is to date, no. So that's a good thing. But while we're on the subject of 529s, I should mention that until, at least based on current law, until December 31st of 2025, we are able to transfer or roll over 529 accounts to ABLE accounts. Again, you heard it right. Through December 31st of next year, we can transfer tax-free and penalty-free 529 accounts over to ABLE accounts. The motivation in doing so is that a 529 account is somewhat limited in terms of its use for education or education purposes. An ABLE account, it's almost unlimited as to what withdrawals can be made for or what it can be, utilized for. And of course, withdrawals from an ABLE account are tax and penalty free. So this is a tremendous advantage for any 529 funds that you don't want to move to a beneficiary of a sibling or don't have an objective or purpose to use for, and you're concerned about, in essence, time passing and ending up having to make a withdrawal from the 529 and being subject to tax and penalty. So if you do have a child with special needs, you have an opportunity to transfer funds through the end of next year from a 529 to an ABLE account. I should also mention that a change that just was effective 6 weeks ago. In the case of a 529, 529 can be transferred to a Roth IRA. This is brand new. The Roth IRA is not in the name of the 529 account holder or owner. It's in the name of the 529 beneficiary. But I bring this up for two reasons. One, to make you aware that it is an option now up to the annual Roth IRA contribution maximum. And should you do a transfer, it does count toward the maximum annual contribution. But be very cautious, because if you have a child with special needs who is the beneficiary of a 529, you're probably going to want to look at transferring it to an ABLE account as opposed to taking advantage of the newfound opportunity to move 529 funds to a Roth, because a Roth IRA in Indiana generally is considered an available resource, and that would undermine their eligibility for the benefits. All right, we have someone in chat. Let me see what we got here. Great news. Thank you for explaining the difference. Okay, you betcha. All right, thank you. All right, so 529s are typically not a problem unless they're the rare situation of a UTMA 529 for our child or dependent with special needs. We've said be very, very cautious about transferring a 529 to a Roth in the name of our child or dependent with special needs. It's likely to be a problem with government benefit eligibility. And please know that you can take advantage of the ability to roll over tax-free and penalty-free 529 resources to an ABLE account through the end of next year. All right, designating your child with special needs. Okay, we did that. I'm sorry. Number 8, allowing your child with special needs to have a sports or other online betting account. Well, I didn't just pull that out of thin air. That's from real life, and worked with a family a couple of years ago where the child with special needs had internet access and was successful at getting an account set up online, a sports betting account. And lo and behold, he kept winning. It was a riot. You know, I mean, who would have thunk? In a matter of months, he had accrued up to $7,000 in his sports betting account. Of course, it was in his name. A major issue with SSI, Medicaid, etc. And so now you might say, oh, well, okay, so let's say it happened. What can you do? Well, the good news is that today's ABLE accounts could accommodate that $7,000 of sports bets winning. And so in today's environment, with the availability of ABLE accounts, it would be a simple matter of liquidating the sports betting account, going online to set up an ABLE account, throwing the funds in there, because $7,000 would be less than the $18,000 that we're allowed to put into an ABLE for calendar year 2024, and problem solved. So that's one of the advantages or benefits of ABLE accounts, and very inexpensively. Annual fee for an ABLE is about $45, so very inexpensive to utilize ABLE. Though please keep in mind there is a Medicaid payback on ABLE, and so ABLE accounts are good for put and take, save and spend. Not really a place to accumulate tens of thousands of dollars unless you have a specific purpose for utilizing it. So it could be the down payment on a condo or a house if appropriate, for the individual with special needs. But because of the Medicaid lien or the payback, we wouldn't want to accumulate a large sum of money and then find the state taking it. Also keep in mind if SSI is involved, 100,000 is the maximum able account balance before we run into SSI issues. We've not seen that happen yet, but never say never. All right, not having a will. So, it's interesting because in doing so many workshops, I often say, have you arranged to leave funds for your child with special needs in a will or trust or this type of thing? And it could leave someone, to wonder by the fact that they don't have a will or don't have a plan, that there's no problem. So dying without a will, if you own anything, is subjecting assets to the probate process and the laws of descent and distribution in the state of Indiana. And so Indiana is not unique. Most states do this. They protect interest of the children of the deceased. And so in essence, by not having a will, not having a plan in place, it is possible, absent of a plan, no will, etc., that literally the state steps in and drives assets to your child with special needs, young child, adult child, this type of thing, the very assets that could undermine their continued eligibility for benefits that the state's on the hook for. So the stakes are really high for planning. It's so very important because with a $2,000 threshold, they would not have to inherit much in order to have an issue. So an example would be if a parent dies owning a house or a condo or a lot at the lake. If they own something and the executor decides, well, we're going to need to sell that, and therefore it becomes liquid cash, then that becomes an asset. And in the absence of a will, or there actually wouldn't be an executor, I stand corrected, it would be an administrator appointed by the court. But as there's liquidity in the estate, then state law would drive some of those assets to the child or children of the deceased, and we'd have benefit issues. So it's best in almost all situations to plan, to have a will, to have a special needs trust, to drive assets for your child or dependent with special needs to their trust. All right, number 10, a trust that distributes to your child based on their age or milestones. I'm sure we've all seen this. That's a trust in your estate plan where someone comes up to me after a workshop or comes in to meet with me for the free consultation, and they're like, great news, we've already got a trust. And then I look at the trust. And indeed, they do have a trust, and the trust will help avoid probate, and it will create order in terms of how their estate's going to be handled. It will keep their affairs private. It will make for a smoother transition upon the death or incapacity of the person setting up the trust, just all kinds of advantages. But ultimately, most of these trusts provide a distribution schedule for children of the person setting up the trust. And unfortunately, that distribution schedule doesn't respect their special needs. And so they may reach the age of 25, 30, or 35, and they're on a distribution schedule, and the trust starts paying out to them. Well, now we have a problem. So trusts in general are not special needs trusts. Special needs trusts are a very separate breed. It takes special planning, and fortunately, we have an informal network of attorneys throughout Kentucky and Indiana. And so as the need to work with an attorney to do estate planning, set up wills, durable powers of attorney, healthcare directives, living wills, et cetera, all of this comes up, we're able to refer families to thoughtful attorneys with the expertise and special needs whose fees are reasonable, will do quality work for your family and certainly your loved one with special needs. Specifically, we have attorneys in Lexington, Louisville, New Albany, Evansville, Indianapolis, Lafayette, Fort Wayne. We've pretty much got the state covered. So, and so we're able to make referral not only for estate planning, but for guardianship where appropriate, including both putting guardianship in place, unwinding guardianship, also Social Security appeals, Medicaid administrative hearings, and doing a happy dance today because a family I work with that has been appealing and working with, fighting, whatever, Social Security for the last 2 years. Finally did get word that their adult son with special needs has been approved for SSI, and I'm just so thankful for that positive outcome. Advocacy is so important, and staying the course and not taking no for an answer, and continuing to come back to the table over and over. So very, very, very cool that we got that news. A couple of questions that have popped up. Thanks so much for hanging in there with me and for your questions. One is there any word on if Indiana will change their Medicaid payback rules? And I'm not aware of at the moment of changes in the offing. We do have Medicaid waiver changes that you may be aware of. These changes at the moment primarily, well, there have been changes every year for about the last 4 years, ever since COVID. One of the earliest changes was incorporating some of the aged and disabled waiver benefits into the family supports waiver, such as home accommodations, vehicle modifications, and so forth. Then it was announced that the aged and disabled waiver was going to migrate to the BEADS office, that the aged and disabled waiver was going to move over from the area agencies on aging to our Bureau of Developmental Disability Services. Well, that never happened because of COVID. And then it was further announced that the aged and disabled waiver, and this is recent, just within the last several months, it was announced that the aged and disabled waiver would break into 2 pieces. One piece called the health and wellness waiver, and the other piece would continue to be the aged and disabled waiver. And so the waiver for younger people with significant medical issues, again, would be called the health and wellness waiver. Basically, it sounds like we're going back to the fragile child waiver that we had more than 20 years ago. But nevertheless, for those of you that have a child with meaningful health issues, then the aged and disabled waiver, again, is breaking into 2 pieces: the health and wellness waiver, and then the remaining aged and disabled. If your child or dependents under the age of 65, they will most likely migrate to the health and wellness waiver. And then potentially at some point, that health and wellness waiver may end up over at the BEADS offices, or the Bureau of Developmental Disability Services, versus the area agencies on aging. And we'll just see how that develops. All right. And then also, could you please explain the 18,000 versus 100,000 limits with ABLE accounts? Okay, so with ABLE accounts, quick primer there: a person can only have 1 ABLE account. You can't have 2. You can only have 1. And an ABLE account has a maximum annual contribution, 18,000. It adjusts each year with the gifting limit. So last year it was 17. This year it's 18. So that's the maximum that can be put in on an annual basis. There is an exception for someone that has employment, that has no retirement plan through their work, but otherwise generally $18,000 for the year. And so that's the maximum annual contribution. That can be put in monthly, or however, it can be put in by the consumer. It can be put in by 20 family members, but 18,000 for the year. 100,000 represents the total accumulation in the ABLE account. So when the total ABLE account balance reaches 100,000, then there's trouble in River City. SSI is going to be cut off basically until the ABLE account is spent down under $100,000. So those are the differences between the 18 and annual contribution limit, 100,000 the maximum accumulation or balance in an ABLE account without avoiding temporary termination of SSI. Okay, a comment. Thanks for getting into the A&D waiver issues. We're going to lose the attendant care opportunity for both our 6-year-old on the spectrum and cerebral palsy, and our 4-month-old with Down syndrome. And I'm so sorry to hear that. I don't think we have the final word on that yet. There is a period of being able to comment, and I think the state's gotten an earful. I'm really hoping that they rethink their position, because there's not adequate staffing out there through the direct service providers to provide the care that's needed for our children with special needs. And I certainly don't see why, if a parent is trained and has the education, the skill, the training to provide the services, who's in a better position to deliver that than parents. So I think they thought they had a got you or aha moment with this thing, but hopefully with better education, they'll see that the direction that they have proposed is not for the benefit of our special needs Hoosier communities. All right, public comment is due on Friday. Thank you for mentioning that, Macy. Public comment again due on Friday of this week for those interested in making a comment. So there's a website to go to. You can also reach out certainly to your representative, state representative, that is, and provide information to them or their office as to your thinking on this subject. But I'm very concerned, especially in rural areas where there's just not enough direct service providers. There's going to be some suffering going on. So really hoping that they're listening, and we have an opportunity till Friday to be heard. So thank you all for that. Okay. All right, let's see here. Okay, yeah. All right. So not having a will got repeated. My apologies. A trust that distributes to children based on age or miles. Those just carried over from the previous, so we'll just keep moving. Okay, an estate plan that disinherits your child with special needs. I'm very thankful that we see this much less often now. That is an estate plan that literally cuts off our children with special needs, making sure that they do not inherit, so that they will be eligible for government benefits. That's basically the only option that existed more than 30 years ago before we got special needs trusts. But there's a better way, let me assure you, than disinheriting your child with special needs to ensure their eligibility for benefits, or leaving it all to siblings or other family members, hoping that they will utilize the funds for your loved one with special needs. And it's just because we're in such a litigious society and people moving everywhere. Over time, my many years of experience is with those strategies, the funds get further and further away from your child with special needs. So if you want to have that assurance that the funds are stuck with that child, not in a way that causes them to lose benefits, but in a way that helps protect their eligibility for benefits and to make certain no matter what, those funds are available for their quality of life, then special needs trust is most often the way to go. All right, another comment. I've done that. Our Rep. Corey Criswell was actually one of the sponsors of the Medicaid Matters bill. So there's someone commenting that they have taken initiative. So thank you for that, and encourage everyone to do so. Okay, reverse of number 3, and that is leaving most of the assets to the child with special needs or their trust while counting on the siblings to embrace the plan. Well, I think you know where I'm going there. All of our kids are human, and to leave the bulk or majority of our assets to the special needs trust for the benefit of our child with special needs simply does not fly well most of the time. And so I work with families where the goal is typically to be fair and equitable as possible, and to have an equal as much as possible distribution of assets and resources. Oftentimes, we can utilize life insurance as a way to add to the column for the child with special needs, but without taking away from the others. And there actually is a special type of coverage in two-parent situations that is incredible. The premiums are so heavily discounted, so it's relatively inexpensive to put in place. It's something called survivorship life that insures both parents together, provides a guaranteed trust funding benefit upon the death of the second parent. And so it's a discounted way to make sure that the special needs trust gets funded and funded amply. All right, working with an advisor or an attorney whose practice does not primarily focus on special needs, whether families work with me or someone else, it really is important to work with individuals that go to work every day and special needs is their focus. That's why I'm so thankful to have the informal network of attorneys so that we can provide thorough and comprehensive planning services for families no matter their situation. Relying on a dated plan that you put together years ago. People have changed, government benefits have changed, just with our discussion a moment ago, tax considerations have changed. Even the Secure Act that 1.0 and 2.0 that passed during COVID affected us in the special needs community in a way you may not be aware. You have changed, and your child with special needs has gone through changes as well. So there's lots of change going on. So if you planned, 5 or 10 years ago or farther back, please take advantage of the free consultation. Let's see what was put in place, because over the course of time, a good plan maybe becomes not so good, because, well, let's take a look at number 7, because of the not updating the plan after many of these events, marriage, remarriage, and this could be you. It could be also people that are representatives in your plan, such as trustees, guardians, executors, and other responsibilities. So marriage, remarriage, divorce, legal separation, death of a spouse, death of an individual, disability or change in location of the proposed guardian and or trustee. Back to the issue of waivers, you may be aware, but waivers are state specific. And it's not easy if you've got a waiver just to move to a different state and expect to pick up where you left off. So sometimes there's consideration given to someone already on a waiver, but in many cases, you go on the waiting list. And I've worked with families that have moved to other states and have dealt with this. And so you really have to be thoughtful and cautious with regards to your guardian selection, because if your child's moving out of state, they may lose their waiver in the process. Also, siblings grow up and need, in many cases, to assume a majority role in your estate plan. So the question is, that 12-year-old when you planned 20 years ago is now 32. So is your plan up to date where they've been elevated to being a successor, guardian, trustee, executor, etc.? It's only natural in time to have adult siblings play a primary role in your special needs plan. Okay, we have something in chat, and I appreciate everyone hanging in there with me. Are you able to set up living wills too? Absolutely. Yeah. And for those of you that are not familiar with living wills, that's your opportunity to have a say as to how you want things handled, typically toward the end of life. So you make a number of elections in a living will, and that provides loved ones and family guidance as to how to handle those times. Okay, moving on to guardianship. Do you have guardianship? If no, is it needed? Present and future considerations. Typically, while a child with special needs is a minor, no guardianship is needed. Once they're 18, it should be reviewed or evaluated. Getting guardianship is not a difficult process in the state of Indiana. You would basically petition your county court. The objective is to have a hearing on the subject of guardianship. Usually you're in and out the courthouse in under 2 hours. And then in some cases, depending upon the county, they want to hear from you on a biannual basis every 2 years. So question number 2 is, are you current with your biannual report to the court? And again, it's typically the anniversary of the guardianship every 2 years. And so if that's something you're not familiar with, then we should talk about that during your consultation, because you certainly want to meet the court's expectations in terms of the guardianship arrangement you've been granted. Do you have a partial guardianship or full guardianship? Sometimes people are surprised to learn that the guardianship that they went to court to get, they weren't thinking different types or parts of guardianship, but they found out later they only got partial guardianship. So usually in the state of Indiana, it breaks down into guardianship of the person and then guardianship of the estate, so the individual and their money. And so oftentimes at age 18, when you're pursuing guardianship, they have no money. Guardianship of the estate may not be needed. Sometimes we have to go back to court to get guardianship of the estate, especially if they inherit unexpectedly, as I've had a family situation do in the last year. Yeah, so being thoughtful in terms of approaching guardianship, what type of guardianship is appropriate, do we need to kind of reevaluate how the guardianship was done, when it was done, this type of thing. All right. Also, is your choice for who is to follow you? And I'm sorry. Oh, goodness, that was a Freudian, wasn't it? Okay, let me correct that quickly. That's funny. Okay, there we go. Okay, to follow. Thank you. Get back there, and can anyone confirm if the presentation is still showing or not?
Yes, it is.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. All right, yeah, so your choice for guardian. Sometimes who you choose has gotten older, they've had kids of their own, the circumstances have changed, it's just not the best selection anymore. Do you have a letter of intent? That's a caregiver guide. We assist families in putting letter of intent together with, it's like an owner's manual, like a living guide, everything that you want a future caregiver or guardian to know about your child with special needs. We're very thankful in working with families. We have a roughly 40-page template. There's a place for everything, and it enables family to get up to speed in a matter of hours or days if something happens to you, versus it taking weeks and months with a lot of angst. So letter of intent is amazing. What is the location of, and with letter of intent, is it current? Yes, if you did one, maybe 10 years ago, so much has changed. So when we do the individual consultation, if you would like the updated template, maybe working with me, we did one before, and the template has grown substantially. So when we have our free consultation, I'm happy to provide you with a fillable Word document or a paper copy for updating the letter of intent. What is the location of the future caregiver or guardian? Again, Medicaid waiver. Do you have the big four in place for your future caregiver or guardian? So what's the big four? All right, so let's do a little audience participation here. Help me out. If something happens to you or you and your significant other, and maybe it's an adult sibling, or maybe it is a sibling of yours, but they have to step up. Help me out with what comes to mind that they are really going to be keenly interested in having in place to both be willing to step up, meaning to be willing to be put into your plan as a guardian or trustee or caregiver, that type of thing, as well as what they're really hoping you have in place for them when or if something happens to you. So go to chat if you would, and give me your thoughts. What do you think they're looking for? Please help me out. Okay. Oh, you're a wonderful group. Bless your hearts. You're putting something in chat. I'm so thankful. Medical records access to. Boy, isn't that the truth? Yeah, especially with my child with special needs, with his really complicated medical situation. I couldn't agree more. Very, very helpful. Yeah, absolutely. Other things that come to mind for anyone that they would want to know is in place, or would want to know that they can count on. Okay. All right. Well, okay. Well, you're wonderful. Thank you all so much. Okay. Financial information, income, expenses. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. All right. So let me throw out a few things. One is they don't want to repeat your journey. So what I mean by that is their idea is to pick up where you left off. They don't want to build it from scratch. Again, they want to pick up where you left off. And so they're very keen that all government benefits that you have worked so hard, been on waiting lists for, gone to doctor's offices to get reports, have appealed, hired an attorney for, on and on it goes. They want to know that they're going to get the help that you have gotten over the years if something happens to you. They simply don't want to start over. And the government benefits, as we've said, are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. So that's critically important. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, they want to know there's some place to turn to pay for what the government can't or won't. Government doesn't cover everything. We know that. They're primarily focused on food, shelter, and healthcare. And there's so much more. Oh, so much more. Whether it's cell phone or internet access or Wi-Fi, satellite TV or cable TV, participating in sports, working with nonprofits. It's going to concerts, sporting events, clothing, travel, cruises, Disney World. I mean, it's just limitless. And the government does not focus on those things. So what does? While we're here, and then when something happens to us, hopefully a well-funded trust. Number three, they don't want to be a caregiver team of one. And I have to tell you, in my 26 years of focus on special needs, some of the most heart-wrenching meetings are with single parents, sometimes single parent moms, trying to handle it all themselves. Whoever it is that you have selected to be the guardian or caregiver, they do not want to be a caregiver team of one. They want to know that there is, team Bill or Bobby or team Susie or whatever, that there's educators, medical people, there's direct service providers, there's case management people, and they don't know all these things. And so helping enlighten them about the fact that there is a team to help support them and to support their child with special needs, their government benefits, there's a funded trust, there's a team. All these things are so very encouraging, and their anxiety level comes down, and we're much more likely to get a positive outcome in terms of their willingness to step up and be the guardian, trustee, caregiver, etc. And there is number 4, and number 4 is that letter of intent we just discussed, that they have a guide. They have you speaking to them, even though you may not be here, with helpful information, anecdotes, thoughts, etc. So that's the big 4 in number 7. Number 8, if not guardianship in place, has your child with special needs executed a durable power of attorney and a healthcare directive, and possibly a living will, as we were discussing a moment ago. So if you do not feel guardianship is warranted or necessary, then it really is critically important that if they have capacity, they execute these documents, so that in the event of crisis or medical situation, that you can jump in and be their advocate. Because if there is no guardianship in place and they've not executed any of these documents, no one is in charge. You may end up finding yourself having to go to court to get an emergency guardianship, just to be able to, have a say in terms of care they're receiving, etc. So really, really important. All right. Okay, this is a really exciting slide. I loved putting this one together. And by the way, we're on time. We will wrap up by 8, I promise. And thanks so much for so many of you hanging in there with me. I know it's a lot of material. Some of it's probably reinforcement of what you already know. Hopefully most everyone is picking up some new information, because there's a lot of 2024 information that's loaded into this presentation, since, as I said, I just put it together earlier today. Number 1, does the potential exist that your child's earned income may exceed SGA? So SGA stands for substantial gainful activity. It's a Social Security term. This represents what Social Security defines as earnings that speak to an individual not being disabled. And this really is regardless of diagnosis. So what I mean by that is if we have a quadriplegic earning more, literally a quadriplegic earning more, then number 2 shows that limit to be $1,550 per month, or in the event of being legally blind from Social Security standards, $2,590 per month. If they have earned income exceeding those levels, Social Security will simply not consider them disabled. And again, the diagnosis does not matter. All right. I have a couple of comments. Are there any guidelines or tips on how to know what is most appropriate for your child regarding guardianship versus durable power of attorney? Yes. A major guideline is do they have the capacity to understand what a durable power of attorney and a healthcare directive document represents? If they do not have the capacity to understand those documents, then certainly attorneys are not going to be open to assisting them with signing something that they cannot understand. So the first litmus test for guardianship is, do they understand a durable power of attorney and what a healthcare directive is? Because that's the alternative to guardianship. And if it's not possible to execute those documents because they do not have the capacity to understand them, again, the first litmus test toward likely needing to pursue guardianship. The other issues that I do bring up are, to what extent are you involved in their care and government benefits? And it's not that guardianship is required, but many times parents tire of being questioned with regards to their standing in making decisions with regards to their 18+ age child with special needs. In addition to that, frequently you're going to be asked to go back to the court to get an updated guardianship certification. They may want it to be in the last 6 months or the last 12 months. So even going to court and getting guardianship can sometimes require it be updated. And if there's no guardianship at all, then you're pretty much starting from scratch. So I would look at capacity issues. I would look at to what extent you're involved in their care, working with case management, direct service providers, et cetera, and that it is a burden not to have guardianship. The third thing would be to what extent they're exposed to influences that are beyond your control or knowledge, maybe in a part-time employment situation, a sheltered workshop situation, et cetera, and what kind of influences, again, they're being subject to. In addition to that, how cooperative they are. That is, how well do they take guidance and direction from you? Because if there are concerns that they're given to either deciding they're going to move out, move on, move somewhere else, move in with someone, potentially get married, take out credit cards, try to access loans, shop online, and perhaps get involved in things online that you would prefer they not. There are a whole host of things that our adult children with special needs can be either subject to or exposed to. And the question is do you need guardianship in order to protect them? So those are general thoughts regarding guardianship. Sometimes parents try without and then circle back to it in time. Okay, moving on. Will this PowerPoint be available to review with a spouse who is unable to attend? And my understanding from Macy is that this evening's workshop is being recorded. And so, Macy, do you want to unmute and share how they might access this? Thank you.
Of course, yes. All registered attendees will be sent at the recording. And if you would like, and you did not register tonight and maybe just hopped on through a friend's link, you can definitely email me. I'll put my email in the chat and we can make sure you get that recording.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Macy. And thanks to Down Syndrome Indiana. What an incredible organization. I'm just so honored and humbled to be a part of my journey with Down Syndrome Indiana over the last 25 or so years. Okay, let's move on to number 3. Number 3 is waiting until age 22 or finishing their secondary education experience before exploring employment or applying for SSI. And this is a big one. Number 3 is a big one. Waiting until 22, meaning waiting until they have finished their secondary education experience, that they aged out, they got their certificate of completion, this type of thing. And at that point deciding, well, maybe we need to check on a Medicaid waiver, or maybe we need to apply for SSI. It really creates challenges is the best way to put it. It is best to pursue the Medicaid waiver. Of course, specifically in the Down syndrome community, the family supports waiver is certainly the most popular, but it's best to pursue that waiver as early on as possible. Now, if your child is 18 or 19 and you're like, that be me, the ship has not sailed. There are opportunities, but waiting until after 22 does make it more challenging. And so especially if you do have a child in that 14 to age 22 category, it's really critical that we meet for the free consultation because post age 22, things do get more difficult. It's difficult to pursue the Family Supports Medicaid waiver. Basically, the BEAD system assumes that you've done so before age 22 because at that point they've aged out of education, and surely you have pursued alternate strategies for programming and support and therapies, et cetera, before 22. And with regards to SSI, you can apply for SSI at any age. However, the way to map them to be on track to draw off of your benefit later when you draw Social Security retirement benefits or survivor benefits when God eventually calls you home, the way to be in like Flint is to apply for SSI prior to the 22nd birthday. So there are points where it's best to be ahead of it versus behind it. And we work with families so that opportunities are maximized, benefits are maximized, et cetera. Now, if any of you have an adult child drawing SSI and you're not getting the $943 a month, then we need to help you, because in most cases, we are able to get Social Security to raise the benefit level from the 2/3 benefit level of $628 and change up to the $943. Okay, so the next comment in chat, does Gordon help us check all the boxes to ensure we have everything in place for guardianship and our kids' finances after we are gone? And the answer is yes, that is my passion, to help other families. I've always looked at the work that I do with families as the sweet side of my personal special needs journey, to be there for other families in their journey as well. Our focus is on both the legal, the financial, the government benefits. And so the approach is comprehensive. There's very little to do with special needs we're not involved with or able to support or be helpful with. All right. Now, I promised to talk about adult child benefits. So it's a perfect segue, applying for SSI if possible prior to age 22. And if your child's over age 22, the ship has not sailed. It's just best not to wait if we can avoid it. But adult child benefits do have several criteria. And this is where the large Social Security benefits are, the $1,200, $1,400, $1,600, $1,800, $2,000 or more per month. So how does your child with special needs, and possibly Down syndrome, become eligible to draw these large Social Security benefits? And it's a triad. There are three primary criteria that it would be helpful for your child to meet to be able to, in the future, draw off of your Social Security record. And those three things are, number one, a Social Security disability determination prior to the age of 22. You get that by applying for SSI before age 22. So that's one of the byproducts or benefits of applying for SSI prior to age 22. So that's number one, a disability determination, if possible, prior to their 22nd birthday. Number two, remaining single, or if they marry, they need to marry someone in a similar situation, from a government benefit, etc. But of course, the easiest way to check that box, to use the phrase someone did in a chat recently, would be to remain single. So that's number two. Number three, it has to do with earned income. And this is becoming a bit more challenging as we have more and more of our special needs population in the workplace. So basically, from age 22 on, they need to, if possible, avoid exceeding the SGA. Again, the current level for the current calendar year 2024, $1,550 per month, unless they are legally blind. But if they do exceed that post age 22, especially repeatedly, then of course they are exceeding what Social Security uses as the measuring stick or the litmus test for being considered disabled. And therefore, if they were to exceed that repeatedly, Social Security is going to reclassify them as non-disabled. The significance there is that now you have a disability determination date that is after the 22nd birthday. It's going to make it very difficult to attach to a parent's record for adult child benefits. So this stuff is tricky. I coach families on Social Security these days almost every day of the week. It's a very hot topic, and it's complicated, and there's no easy I can Google that answer type of thing. Social Security website is overwhelming at best. I mean, I had a mother on the phone coming down from Indianapolis today. She's 65. She's decided she's going to retire. She has an ex-spouse, and she's trying to figure out if he's going to draw off of her record because they were married for 20 years before divorcing. And if her ex draws off of her record, which she thinks is stronger than his, then what implications is that going to have on her adult son on the autism spectrum who is disabled? And so we were running through the possibilities of her ex continues to draw off of himself, he draws off of her, she draws off of herself, her son draws off of her, all the, and so forth. And, and she just commented, basically asked the question, how on God's green earth are we supposed to figure all this stuff out? And she's been to the Social Security office twice and commented that every time she's there, I'm only more confused. So she was so thankful that I had the road time, and we talked for probably a half hour and kind of walked through it. And by the time I arrived at my Louisville office, she's like, well, you talked me off the roof. I feel much better. And she had an action plan moving forward. So these Social Security benefits are worth a fortune, but they're complicated. And I would really encourage you to take advantage of the free consultation so we can talk about where you're at with this, because there's so much involved with Social Security. There's SSI, there's SSDI, drawing off of their own record, which is a new thing now, really exciting that we're actually having our young people employed, and through just part-time employment, they're earning enough to become eligible to draw Social Security benefits off of themselves. A question, let's see, how is Social Security determination of disability different from waiver eligibility or confirmation of diagnosis? Thank you so much for that. All right, the answer is that for the waiver, they have their evaluations and the determinations of the need for assistance at various levels, like 1 through 5. And so there is a process for the Medicaid waiver. That is not the process that Social Security goes through. They have their own. The BEADS office is probably not going to send them to a psychologist. Social Security very possibly will. I would certainly say that the standard for approval or getting the Social Security getting the disability determination is most difficult with Social Security. So this is why, when possible, it's advantageous to pursue the Medicaid waiver where the standard is not quite as high, especially those in the Down syndrome community typically do not have a problem with their child qualifying for the Family Supports Medicaid waiver. And so if you have that in your pocket already, heading up toward age 18, when we engage with Social Security, then you have momentum on your side. In which case they already have disability Medicaid, they have the Medicaid waiver, and we're looking in much better shape toward pursuing the SSI. And I have to tell you, 20 years ago, SSI was, just a few $100s a month, and people were like, I can manage without it. These days, I figure by next year, it's going to be close to $1,000 a month. You can't blow it off. It's worth way too much. And not only that, but it's putting them in line again for the big prize of drawing off of your earnings record in the future. And by the way, it does not reduce your benefit. I'm always asked that by parents. So if they draw off of me, I'm guessing I'm sharing my benefit with them. The answer is no. You as the parent draw the benefit that you're entitled to without reduction whatsoever. Your child draws in addition to. And as a result of that, families that have an adult child with special needs are really getting their money's worth out of payroll taxes or FICA taxes, because by the time you have mom, dad, and adult child drawing Social Security benefits, we're seeing collective families drawing in excess of $5,000 a month. You heard me right, over $5,000 per month. And so we want to play our cards right, maximize on these benefits. It's really powerful. Okay, so we don't want to miss out on adult child benefits. So let us help you get your child in the queue so that they can enjoy these incredibly valuable benefits. And then if they're with a family member or in supportive living, et cetera, if they themselves are drawing eventually $2,000 plus per month, that's going to help tremendously. All right, missing out on student earned income exclusion. This is another overlooked opportunity. Up until age 22 if they're still in school, and this can be if they're on a certificate track until age 22, or if they exit high school and they're auditing classes at Ivy Tech, or they're maybe taking a class at Ivy Tech, they're at Erskine Green Training Center, in Muncie, they are at Lincoln Tech, you name it. If they're in some sort of education program, then they are likely eligible for the student earned income exclusion, which means in most cases their part-time employment does not reduce their SSI by 1 penny. You heard me right. They could be getting an SSI benefit of as much as $943 a month, and in addition to that, earning $500-600 a month in part-time employment. And never say never. I mean, no longer this, $4 and $5 minimum wage stuff. I mean, we have many people in the special needs community earning anywhere from $12 to $16 an hour. If they're under age 22 and they're involved somehow in education, in most cases, their SSI benefit is unaffected by that wage. And for that reason, it's really beneficial to experiment with employment between 18 and 22 because there's no downside. They can keep all their SSI in addition to whatever income that they're able to earn as a result of employment. So student earned income exclusion, incredible missed opportunity in so many situations. And unfortunately, Social Security in many cases is not talking about it. So the adult child benefits, the student earned income exclusion, child support. The presumption is if child support is being paid, that it's an automatic dollar for dollar reduction against the SSI, and that simply does not have to be the case. So I'm here to tell you, and of course, there's plenty of divorce, remarriage, and blended family situations in the special needs community. But it is possible to avoid the reduction against the SSI benefit for child support. So if you're a parent receiving child support and you're wondering about that, then again, let us help you with options available to preserve the SSI benefit in addition to child support that may be paid. And we do see child support being paid in some situations beyond the age of 18 in Indiana. Number 7, when their part-time employment, that is the part-time employment of our child or children with special needs, reaches a point where, believe it or not, they start racking up Social Security credits, the same as you and I have for many years. Well, what's amazing is part-time employment gets the job done. You heard me right. Part-time employment is enough in many situations for them to accrue quarters toward being able to draw Social Security benefits off of themselves. Well, that's really exciting for several reasons. Number one, if they draw Social Security disability off of themselves, there's no reduction on that part of Social Security for working. So as they age beyond 22 and SSI would be subject to reduction for their earned income, not so with SSDI. So that's a positive. In addition to that, once they start drawing SSDI, 24 months later, they become Medicare eligible. Now you've got Medicare as primary coverage, Medicaid is secondary, and it's a much gentler exit from your group health insurance. So that's a real positive. So how much do they have to earn? Well, they would need to be north of $1,730 a quarter. So if we do the quick math here, $1,720 per quarter is $573 a month. So it's only $573 a month. So you might say, well, that's really a lot. But if we say they're earning, let's say they're just earning at $12 an hour. At $12 an hour, that's 48 hours per month. So they would need to be working somewhere around 12 hours a week. Again, very, very part-time. 11, 12 hours a week is usually enough with a reasonable wage level for them to start earning enough to start racking up quarters. Of course, your comeback is going to be, yeah, but they have to have 40 quarters to be eligible. And the answer is not at young ages. Believe it or not, as little as 6 quarters, a year and a half of earning at that level will put them in line to start drawing Social Security disability off of themselves. I work with families where the young person is only 22 or 23 years old, already drawing Social Security disability and in the queue to become eligible for Medicare. So really exciting stuff. Very much so. All right, and that's well under the 1550 SGA limit. So we're not flirting with the potential loss of Social Security. All right. Okay, I think we're toward the end here. Okay, a few last things, moving on to trust funding. Counting on employer-provided life insurance to fund a special needs trust. Unless you're thinking you're going to die young and tragically, your group life insurance will have long expired before you die. So please do not rely upon employer-provided group life insurance to fund a special needs trust. Number 2, counting on term life insurance to fund a special needs trust. Most term life insurance is designed to self-destruct by the time we reach retirement. It's a 20-year term we picked up in the 40s when we knew how many kids we were going to have, etc. So it expires. It usually has long since expired before we do, and therefore not eligible to fund the trust. Counting on retirement funds. Most people accumulate retirement funds to maximize the match from their employer and build up a retirement fund to fund retirement with, not fund a special needs trust. And I certainly wouldn't want to be the retiree that feels like they can't utilize any of their retirement funds for fear that there won't be enough left to fund the special needs trust. Also, counting on an inheritance to fund a special needs trust. We simply don't know, for those that still have parents living, how much of what they have will be spent on their care on their way out. Expecting funds to be left over from a first-party trust, ARC Master Trust 2. This is not a good strategy because first-party trusts, as opposed to third-party trust, and ARC Master Trust 2s have Medicaid liens on them. And so it's best not to assume that those funds are going to be available to pass on to other family members at the passing of our child with special needs. Exceeding total income limits. Oh, this is something that a lot of people do not know about. But eventually, when they're drawing benefits off of us as parents and their Social Security benefits are quite high, if they also have some amount of employment, there is a concern about exceeding the $2,829 overarching monthly income limit. So let me give you an example. If they're drawing $2,000 off of a parent, and that's possible these days, and they are working part-time and earning $1,000 a month, also possible, then that's $3,000, and that exceeds the 2829, which happens to be the maximum income threshold to maintain eligibility for Medicaid. So, so at exceeding 2829 means Medicaid is at risk of being lost. And this may be in their older years when we're retired, and we're looking at them hopefully getting into the CIH waiver, where the benefits are much more significant for supported living after we go. It is no time to lose Medicaid, I assure you. So in situations where they've got reasonable part-time income, they're drawing significant Social Security benefits, we need to do some work, because there are actually two fixes for number 6 here in Indiana. And so there's literally a way to fix that, so that exceeding, believe it or not, the $2,829 does not mean the loss of Medicaid. Number 7, not reviewing the Medicaid waiver to determine if a different waiver should be considered. Some people get on one waiver, stick with it forever. So it just depends upon the unique circumstances. We have about 5 different waiver programs in Indiana. And so I'm constantly kind of auditing the Medicaid waiver use, because parents will tell me, well, we're hardly using it. Then I'm thinking maybe it's not the best Medicaid waiver to be on. So looking at that is important. Assuming work means a loss of government benefits, absolutely not. In most cases, employment does not mean a loss of government benefits. I'm very pro-employment and the opportunities that exist today that did not exist 20 years ago. Life insurance policy insuring your child with special needs, be very cautious. Medicaid is very restrictive on life insurance that insures them and where they are the owner. So make sure if you have a life insurance policy on your child with special needs where they're the insured, that you are the owner and you have a backup owner as well, because if ownership defaults to them for some reason, the policy will probably have to be liquidated. All right, in the couple of minutes we have left, not preparing for long-term care needs of either or both parents. It's really important to prepare for the potential need for care for yourself, because otherwise your need for long-term care may sap the estate that you thought would provide abundant funding for the special needs trust. So as parents especially get to 50 or older, we really need to have a conversation about just how we're going to handle your long-term care needs for yourself, not just your child. Relying too heavily upon government programs. As we know, the government has deficits. They're spending money they don't have in many cases. And so it's so important that we do planning to undergird and support our child with special needs, not rely too heavily upon government benefits. Number 3, in the home stretch, keeping a retirement account following a stint of employment. So if while employed, they got a retirement account and then they leave that employer, that retirement account in most cases is a problem. So we will need to liquidate, transfer to ABLE, spend the funds, or look at various options, but just be cautious about that with more of our special needs people in the workplace than ever before. And in many cases, even though they're part-time, being auto-enrolled in retirement accounts. And so if they do leave that employer, we're going to need to look at our options, because simply leaving those retirement funds in place usually does not end well. And last but not least, under the wire, setting up an ABLE account to keep income under 1550 or 2829. ABLE accounts are for resource solutions. They help keep a person under the $2,000, but please understand, funds transferred to an ABLE account is not the equivalent of staying under the SGA or under the Medicaid limit of $2,829. Okay, I promised to wrap up on time. I want to honor that promise. I'm so thankful for all of you. And I'm so appreciative that you hung in there with me, because we covered so much this evening, and it was such an honor to do this for you. So at any rate, I yield back to you, Macy. Look for the email from Jamie, and please request your free consultation, and we'll be back at it next Tuesday with yet another fresh new workshop for adult consumers with special needs. Macy, take it away.
Thank you so much. And thank you again for all of